Wingy Saturday, everyone. What is going on? We are here. We are back for another Saturday weekend podcast. Happy to be here. Feels like it's been a couple of weeks since we've been here for a normal one, but we are here today with some interesting stuff to get into. A little bit of news, a little bit of wrestling results. We have some upcoming shows. We have Full Gear. We have Blood and Guts. We have Survivor Series. We've got another Saturday night's main event coming up in December with John Cena's final match. We have the John Cena tournament kicking off this Monday on Raw. We had kind of an eventful SmackDown last night, even though I feel like the show really sucked. We had some news coming out of that show. New United States champion on the women's side, and Drew McIntyre has been suspended again. Correct me if I'm wrong. Have both GMs now suspended Drew McIntyre like in the last year? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about Dynamite. We'll talk a little bit about this past week's Raw, which I was not up here for any sort of review or watch along at all. So we'll talk about the Logan Paul stuff and what that might mean for the Vision and Survivor Series. And we'll talk about some wrestling news, and we're going to talk about the quite significant drop in numbers that WWE is currently experiencing right now with not only ratings, they had an absolutely horrific rating on SmackDown last Friday, dropping under 1 million, but also attendance is not great. Now, it's also the off time of year. Fall always sucks. Mania season is coming up here soon. They're going to draw a huge house for Boston on Monday, which I still don't believe is sold out, but Raw on Monday should have a nice, big, huge crowd. So will the following week in Madison Square Garden. Survivor Series has got over 30,000 fans or tickets sold for that. I'm going to be there. John Cena's final match on Saturday night's main event is probably going to be a sellout. Then we got the Rumble in Saudi. Then it's Mania season. So WWE, numbers-wise, they're going to pick back up here. But there are some alarming things that we're going to talk about. And more specifically, we're going to talk about why these things might be happening. Sure, WWE is experiencing a drop in numbers and attendance and in overall fan interest and ratings. So why is that? That's what we do when we talk about this with AEW. When they experience drops, what happened to them? Why is this happening? We're going to talk about why it's happening possibly in WWE. We're also going to talk about AEW this week announcing yet another championship belt. They are resurrecting the NWA national title, which still exists in the current NWA. Mike Mondo is the current champion over there, so he hasn't shut the fuck up on social media for the last 5 days. And now AEW is resurrecting this new championship to be crowned at Full Gear, so we'll talk about that and whether or not I think that is a good idea. We've got some unfortunate news on Ridge Holland. He has been let go even earlier than expected by WWE. We're going to talk about the potential opponent for Tanahashi's final match, as well as John Cena's final match coming up. Also, Vince Russo is a juggalo. We got that AEW book out now as well, which we'll talk about briefly, and we'll talk about an update on Cody Rhodes and when he believes his career will be over in the WWE. Like I said, we'll also talk about Raw. We'll talk about Chelsea Green getting creamed this week on NXT ahead of her United States Championship win last night, and we'll also talk about a little bit of Dynamite, and we'll preview Blood and Guts, Full Gear, and what's on tap for Collision tonight. So that is kind of on the menu for today. Quick 2-hour podcast here, and then I got to head to work. Tonight is my Friday night, and I've got the next 3 days off after this. So you guys are going to see a lot of me in the next week. I have lots of stuff coming because next week is a big week. So stay tuned in just a minute, and I'll tell you what we have planned for tomorrow and for Monday and for next Thursday. If you look at the date on Thursday, think in your head what that video might be about, and I'll tell you about it in a minute. Anyway, let's say hello to everybody here in the chat. I want to welcome to the family Shanae Calburn, or is it Cheyenne? Shanae Calburn, welcome to the family. And the members are going to have a lot of holiday stuff coming. We got some members-only festivities planned for the holiday season. It's going to be great, so stay tuned and welcome to the family and anybody else who's already in the family. Thanks for being in the family, man. Good to see Melissa. Zane G is in the house. Jay Lambo, Colin Wright, Ben Espinoza, Rodrigo. We've got Mike Rouse, David Brown, Chaz Medeiros. Good to see you. Denny Downbad, Steven Jacobson. What's up, bro? We've got William Cullen. We've got the Leninator, FFC. Right on. Shell Shock. Gilbert Arbalo's in the house. The new one. Vontae, good to see you, bro. We got James Kowalski in here. I'm so glad. With all the wrestling podcasts, the fact that I can be anybody's favorite is pretty amazing since, everybody and their mother and their grandmother all have podcasts. So the fact that I'm anyone's favorite is pretty cool. Thanks for that, James. Danny, good to see you. Spartan Sprinkles in the house as well. And we've got Luke McAllister dropping in a generous $10. Thanks for that, my friend. What's up? After last night's SmackDown, WWE needs some real help creatively. They have a great roster, but I wish the stories were more compelling, and I don't know where Julia goes from here. It was probably the right idea to take the belt off of Julia, but it's frustrating knowing that she held the belt for that long and they didn't do shit with her. And they need a lot of help creatively. We're going to talk about some of the asinine things Triple H has said just this week, along with Mark Shapiro raising a few eyebrows as well with some of their comments. The future does not look bright for the WWE and their relationship with their fan base. We are growing ever more turned off by their behavior and their business practices and their philosophies. And we'll be talking about that here in just a little bit. Thanks as always for that, Luke. William Cullen dropping in $2. Appreciate that, my friend. We have Ryan Adams in the house. Victor Colon. It's Robert is here as well. Anybody else that is showing up here in the chat, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Saturday to you. And like I said, we have a big week coming up on the channel. So before I jump into the wrestling news, let me let you know what is going on. We're going to start with tomorrow night's watch along. And if you look at the calendar and you see the date of tomorrow, wrestling fans of 30 years or more will probably always remember the date of November 9th, because that was the date of the Montreal Screwjob, and that is going to be the show we are going to watch tomorrow. I've put this one off for years doing watch-alongs on this because I didn't really enjoy Survivor Series 1997. It's not a very great memory for me, but we got to do it eventually, and since tomorrow is the actual anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob, which I believe will be, 28 years, we are going to watch that one tomorrow night. Also on Monday night, I don't have a link up for you guys yet, but on Monday night, we're going to do a watch-along of Monday Night Raw instead of a review. Raw is in Boston. It's Cena's final night in Boston. He might have an impromptu match. I'm still holding out hope for that Dominic thing. And also the John Cena tournament kicks off. So I think we might have a little bit more of a fun or more eventful Monday Night Raw this Monday in Boston than we had this week in New Mexico. So we'll be up here for a watch-along on Monday. I will post a link to that watch-along by tomorrow. So just keep a lookout for that. And then this coming Thursday, let me double check the date on that, make sure I have the date right. It's not Wednesday. I believe it's going to be Thursday is when I'm going to drop this. Yes, Thursday the 13th, it's not going to be a live stream. I will be dropping a 20-year anniversary video on the late, great Eduardo Guerrero, who passed away 20 years ago this Thursday. And everything that I remember about his death and his career and all of that stuff, we're going to take a nice, big, deep dive look into the life and the career of Eddie Guerrero this coming Thursday. So just keep a lookout for that. And then, of course, it'll be next weekend again, which we'll be here for a podcast and yet another watch-along. And I think next Sunday we have Survivor Series 2005 planned, and the link is already up on the channel for that. So anyway, that's what we got going on this week. Watch along tomorrow and a watch along Monday, and special Eddie Guerrero video on Thursday. So that does it for all of the scheduling stuff and all the housekeeping. I guess we can start jumping into some wrestling news. And I think I want to open up with what you see here on the screen. Big arrow going in the downward direction for WWE here. We have seen a slow kind of, I guess, staleness build up over the past few months, over the past year. And this is something that I had said right in the thick of. I don't know how many times I've said this. I've repeated this incessantly on these podcasts, even when WWE was just riding high, when they were kicking ass, and 2023 was such a good year. We were riding that post-Vince high of not having that fucking dipshit around running things anymore in WWE. Triple H seemed to have a much better grasp on things and head on his shoulders, and he didn't seem so Vince-ish. And at first, things were going great. Storylines were hot. We had the Bloodline. The women were kicking ass. You know, even the Judgment Day was rocking hard over on the Raw brand. It felt like they were doing everything right. Attendance was through the roof. Sellouts, crazy shows, stadium shows. Same thing with ratings. They were doing crazy numbers on Fox for SmackDown, especially during those Bloodline days. And everything was tremendous. And one of the things I was saying is as much as I was enjoying that product, is that you can't take your foot off the gas. And when you get this kind of like complacency, when you get this arrogance, when you have this overconfidence, this drunk with power, it's kind of something we're seeing in real life in politics right now. Drunk with power, where they feel like they're untouchable, can't do any wrong type of thing. Yes, you can. You can very much do wrong. And WWE is seeing that right now. And they've had a lot of things and they've done a lot of things to kind of turn the audience members off. And sometimes we as fans can kind of ignore certain things, as long as the product's good, as long as we're enjoying every Raw, every SmackDown, or as many Raws and SmackDowns as we can, and the pay-per-views are kicking ass. You tend to let some shit slide when the product is good, but when the product is bad, and it comes off lazy, and it comes off uninspiring, and there's just nothing going on, that's when the fans might be overly critical of some other aspects of your personality, and your philosophy and how you're running the WWE. And now that they are in, year number 3-ish of the TKO merger there, and you're starting to see, changes in WWE, changes in their philosophy, specifically with the ticket pricing. They are price gouging the fuck out of their audience. They are nickel and diming them to fucking death, literally, and they have completely priced out families. The only people in the front row to WWE shows is that green shirt motherfucker, who's obviously got more fuck you money than any one man should have. And so he's front row at every damn pay-per-view and live event. But if you have 3 young sons all under the age of 12 and they all want to go to WrestleMania, good luck with that. You're going to have to either take out a second mortgage on your house, sell a car, sell one of your kids, sell an organ. You got to have to do something like that because it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. It's going to be years worth of birthdays and Christmases, to afford something like that. And that is one of the main things that I think is having an effect on their attendance. Now, like I said, this coming Monday's Raw, I still don't think is a sellout, but don't read too much into that. It probably will be a sellout by Monday, and they're drawing a good house for that, for Cena's final show. The next week in Madison Square Garden is another big one. And then on Saturday night's main event, that's going to be another big one. Plus, Survivor Series is at Petco Park. And they've already sold 30,000 plus tickets for that, in probably like a $35K setup type of thing. So they'll probably come close to, selling that out to capacity at Survivor Series as well. So this certainly is not a sky is falling type of thing, the way the Anger Boys do with AEW. They get one bad rating. Oh, TNT's going to cancel the show because they're fucking idiots. No, WWE is in no danger here whatsoever of losing their number one spot. This has nothing to do really with AEW at all. When I brought up the ratings that they had received for last week's SmackDown, I don't think the number is out yet for last night. But for last week's SmackDown, they drew 933 fucking thousand. That is under 1 million. I don't give a shit if it was Halloween. I don't give a shit if it was the World Series. That sucks. So all the people with these excuses, the same people who yell at Dave Meltzer, if he says, oh, Dynamite went head-to-head with Game 7 of this or Game 7 of that, or there was 4 football games on, or there's something going on, the presidential address, or whatever's going on. Oh, excuses. Well, you're saying these same excuses for WWE. Yes, it was Halloween. Yes, it was the World Series. Those things, I'm sure, did factor into the ratings. Yes, but I don't care which way you slice it. That is an alarmingly low number for WWE. But AEW only draws 400. It's not about AEW. We're talking about WWE and the percentage drop that they have seen. When a year ago, they are easily doing double this rating on SmackDown. Double. And attendance-wise, about the same. Random-ass SmackDowns are pulling in 14,000 just for a random-ass show with nothing advertised. Now, if you've noticed, they're running smaller buildings, aren't they? I was scrolling through Wrestle Tickets. And a lot of these upcoming Raws and SmackDowns are about in anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 seat arenas. I think that's great. One of my biggest criticisms of WWE years ago was when they were doing shitty attendance, even shittier than this. They were, I swear, some Raws and SmackDowns were doing Dynamite numbers. We're talking 3,000, maybe 4,000 if they're lucky. And they were still in basketball stadiums that seat 20,000. So you're filling up a fourth of your arena and then tarping the fuck off of the rest of it. And I was, at the time, this is before AEW was even around, I was saying, why doesn't WWE run smaller buildings? Because if you're only drawing 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 for your shows, find buildings that are that size. That way it looks full. And AEW finally started doing that. They're running smaller venues. Sometimes they run venues that are too small. I'm not a fan of them running 1,000-seat arenas the very next Dynamite after a pay-per-view. I think that's stupid, but they have ran smaller buildings now, being a little bit more streamlined, doing residencies, things like that to try to, streamline costs and to make the environment look good and to change up the environment. And those smaller buildings, a lot of them, especially the theaters, are set up a little bit differently each one, so you get kind of unique looks. And I was really happy that they were doing that. I'm also happy to see that WWE is starting to do this as well. There's no reason to pay these, rent fees for these big basketball stadiums if you're only filling up a third of it. So rent a smaller one. And it looks like they're doing that a little bit. The building they were in New Mexico, and I don't know if they've ever ran a Raw for that, or Raw in that building before, or any sort of a show there. I mean, they probably have, but I think that's a good idea to run smaller buildings if you're going to have lower attendance like that. So WWE has got low attendance, and they also have lower ratings. Now, again, all of this stuff can bounce back. I'm sure last night's SmackDown, even though it was not a good show, will be back over 1 million, so no reason to freak out. But if I had a nickel for every time some little child, some little boy, because it's never a grown man and it's never a woman, some little boy tweeted out, Tony Khan can't even draw 1 million. Well, neither can WWE, apparently. So the point is, wrestling is just kind of bad right now. Both companies have superb talent. Both companies have the ability to do and provide great television, because we've seen it from both. There was a short little window there where both companies were on fire. Think about how fun that was, like 2022, before the Punk drama really hit. Both companies were kind of hitting it pretty good, and then the shit hit the fan kind of for both of them. AEW went through the whole CM Punk and Brawl Out and Brawl In and all of that drama. And they're just now finally starting to recover a little bit from that. Now WWE is going down the shitter, and a lot of it is their own doing. So when you look at these numbers from WWE, you look at the attendance, you look at the ratings, and you also just look at the opinions of the fans in general. And you ask yourself, what has happened to WWE? What has caused these numbers? And I think it's a whole bunch of things. Number one is the flat creative. There's absolutely nothing very inspiring at all going on in WWE creatively. And what is scary about that, something that I've mentioned before, is that they don't seem to get it. They don't seem to understand. And it's this weird overblown confidence that they think that they are geniuses. They think they are absolute geniuses. Last night on SmackDown, when R-Truth showed up back there with the room when they're making the drawings, and he said something about, I don't want your balls touching my balls. They probably thought that was the funniest fucking thing when they were in the writer's room for that. They think they're geniuses and they're morons. And that's what I hate the most. That's what the fucking guy in charge is like that. I'm so smart. I'm so great. I know how to draw a clock and fucking count to 10 because I'm a genius and everybody else around me is low IQ idiots. Come on. We can see, it's so easy to see through that shit. And WWE has a lot of that same type of just arrogance to them, where they don't think, they're pontificating, like Triple H had said something this week about that they don't book matches. We don't book matches because it'll be a good match. We're booking matches that will tell the best stories. Bullshit. Well, then what the fuck was Ilya Dragunov and Johnny Gargano for last night then? If you're not booking matches to have good matches, what the fuck was that match doing on SmackDown? They have no story. There's no story there. You booked that match because we know we would get a great match, and we did. Dragunov versus Jonathan Wrestling was tremendous, and I'd watch it again. So that right there is a lie. That is a lie. We don't book matches because it'll be a good match. We book matches that will tell the best stories. No, you don't. Not all the time, anyway. And so that match last night, Dragunov versus Gargano, goes directly against what Triple H just said this week, And so on top of the flat creative, and they're too stupid to realize they have flat creative, they're unimaginably lazy, breathtakingly lazy. That John Cena tournament that we're in the middle of right now that kicks off on Monday, they're drawing names. The reason they're drawing names is because they don't want to release a bracket yet. I know they have to kind of keep some things secret, because they're advertising people who don't work here. But all you have to do is release a bracket with a question mark under the people who don't work there as mystery people or something like that. The reason they're doing the drawing the balls thing is because they don't really know how they're going to book this yet. They don't exactly know which matches they want to do. They are flying by the seat of their pants like they always do. And I think the only thing that they really know about that tournament is who's winning it. My pick has not changed. It's going to be Gunther. Gunther's facing John Cena on Saturday night's main event. That's what's happening. But how you get to that, I truly believe that WWE does not know. They're just working it out that day on TV. So on Monday, we know the matches we're going to get, but we have not seen any sort of bracket. So WWE's not showing us any of that because they don't know. They're not ready. They don't have their shit together creatively. They probably know, or they definitely know who's going to win, but I do not think they have anything else figured out beyond that because they're just not quite sure who they're going to use and which matches they're going to do quite yet. So that's why they've got the random drawing so they can take their time and they don't have to throw a bracket at us and then change it around once they change their mind. I'm completely convinced that that's what's going on here. So you've got flat creative, you've got lazy creative, and you have, I feel like WWE not working at their full potential. Like if they really wanted to have fun with the Cena retirement, he could have had a much better year than he had. I think they could be doing this tournament better. There's a lot of things they could be doing better. Even the Seth Rollins injury. Now I'm going to give them a pass for not doing a deadly game tournament because you're not going to do a tournament on top of a tournament. I understand that, but I still feel like the way that was done, determining the new champion after Seth vacated, was lazy. Even if you can't do a tournament, you could have had more fun than that. And the fans do not want or like or want anything to do with Jey Uso, right now because his matches suck and the match at Saturday night's main event sucked and his matches all fucking suck. And I'm a Jey Uso fan and I hate to say that about him, but he's getting gassed on his entrances. Everybody can see it. His matches look like they're being worked in slow motion. His spears, look like something that a 3-year-old could kick out of. And it's just ass. Now, if Triple H would have had that very same conversation that we saw on WWE Unreal, what if he would have walked up to LA Knight instead of Jey Uso? Hey, we're going to strap a rocket here. Now, I'm sure if they did that, people would probably still have plenty of complaints about LA Knight's title run, especially if he dropped it right back to Gunther. But I have a feeling his matches would be better, and I think the overall title run would have been received better by the audience. And I think Jey Uso got wasted with Cody Rhodes and that bus that time when they won the tag team titles, went on the press conference drunk and started eating, and that's where his world title push came from. And I'm a big Jey Uso fan, but it is kind of when, in hindsight now, you really feel like that call should have been made for LA Knight. They both are super over with the audience, but I think LA Knight would have performed better as a short-term world champion than Jey Uso did. So that's another problem, is picking Jey Uso over LA Knight. Bringing back Brock Lesnar is another one. Some fans don't care. They think he's just the greatest and he's an alpha male and he did nothing wrong and Vince McMahon is innocent and should be worshipped and put on Mount Rushmores and all of that. But for normal people who aren't assholes or evil or weird or stupid or virgins or anything like that, we don't like this. We didn't need Brock. We don't want Brock. He doesn't really bring any interesting possibilities to the table anymore. And there he is sitting there on that WrestleMania video where they brought out Punk and Roman and Cody and Brock and they're all playing poker, no women, no Rhea Ripley, who's a top 5 performer in the company. She's not there, but who is there? Triple H. Triple H is there. He's front and center. He's got this Dana Envy. Dana Envy, one of the most unlikable fucking douchebags that you can possibly imagine. And of course, Triple H wants to be just like that. He's envious of an asshole. You don't want to be like him. Are you kidding me? You got the bald head, I guess, or whatever. But like the fact that Triple H clearly wants to be Dana White, you can see that. And all of this shit, just when you kind of combine it all, it's not necessarily one individual thing, but when you combine a lot of these things together, this, in my mind, is what's contributing to this fall in numbers. Is WWE just kind of turning us off? Now they brought back Brock Lesnar, who's been named, 44 times in a sex trafficking lawsuit, and they don't care? And they bring him back into a locker room that's, 40% women? When Brock was being given a woman to use at his own disposal as a contract negotiating tool, take this woman, do what you want with her in your hotel, just re-sign with us, And so you got all of that. You've got the partnership with Saudi Arabia. We're losing a Royal Rumble to them next year, and we're losing a WrestleMania to them the year after. We're going to have to watch WrestleMania at 9 o'clock in the fucking morning. Hooray. I don't mind if London gets one, but Saudi Arabia, Jesus. So you got the bloody Saudi money and all the shit they do over there. Their absolute refusal to take risks or to try to capitalize on an inconvenient situation, like what happened with Seth Rollins. Hey, let's make the best of this. We got an opportunity now. We've got a vacated title. What can we do with this situation, this unfortunate situation that we're all devastated about? We didn't want to lose Seth. He's now, his absence is now going to screw up our creative a little bit, but how can we maximize this for the fans? How can we take this unfortunate negative and turn it into as close as a positive as we can? They don't think like that. They have no interest in that. They're just like, fuck, how can we get around this inconvenience with as little effort as possible? Minimal effort, negative effort. They want to do as little work as they possibly can to get around an unfortunate situation instead of saying, what can we do to capitalize on this? You got to capitalize. Controversy creates cash. There's always opportunities in every situation, and they don't even seem like they're even trying to look for one. So they're just lazy as all fuck. Plus you have other things like the obsessive and the petty counter-programming of AEW. They're so big and bad and number one, and we're the great big bad WWE, and we're so perfect in every way, but we're scared of AEW. They're scared of them. AEW completely lives rent-free in their head. WWE truly believes that they should be the only form of pro wrestling out there, which is a surefire way to kill the business completely. They believe that only they should be allowed to have wrestling on television. Man, that sounds familiar. No wonder they're in bed with MAGA. It's the same type of shit. Only us. Nobody else, just us. And if anybody else tries to do that, we're going to do our best to suppress them. So they counter-program, and they're going to do anything they can to get Tony Khan out of their lives, instead of just being confident in your own ability and your own company's ability to manage and produce television, because they suck their own dicks like no other. Self blowjobs, stroking themselves off, touting their own shit, their great numbers, their great attendance, their great dollar figures, what we do, and how we're all so great. If you are so great, then why do you give a shit? Why do you give a shit that they're there? If you're so great, you should have the opposite attitude. We're happy AEW exists because we love owning them. We love showing the wrestling fans of the world that we do pro wrestling better than they do. And the fact that they are so butthurt about their mere existence shows me that they don't have that confidence. They know that another wrestling company can either easily come around and do what they do better. They project the confidence, but they don't really truly have it. Because if they did, they wouldn't give a shit that AEW exists at all. Vince McMahon didn't pay no attention to WCW, or the early days when he was cutthroat and he was taking out all the territories. He was ruthless then. But in terms of the early 90s, you think Vince gave a shit about WCW in 91, 92, 93? It wasn't until 94 that he started saying, oh, shit, these guys might be a problem. But just completely ignored them. We do what we do. We are better than everybody else. So then go be that. If you're better than everybody else, go be it. Don't worry about counter-programming. Let AEW exist. Because if you're so great, they shouldn't be a problem. But they are. WWE's obsessed with them. Not to mention things like what happened with R-Truth, what happened with Ridge Holland, and we're going to talk about in a minute, and any other situation like that, Mickie James getting her shit sent to her in a trash bag, and all these years of just shitty things that WWE has done. They prove every single day that they don't give a fuck about their wrestlers at all. If you're a top fucking level star and you're in that top 5 or something like that, I'm sure they're going to be very gracious and protective of you. But, they see Ridge Holland going on social media, criticizing WWE and being worried about his ability to feed his family and make a living. And so their response is to fire him early. You got the President of the United States in court fighting to keep SNAP benefits away fighting to keep starving people starving. Fighting to keep them starving. And here you have Ridge Holland who, shouldn't have said what he said maybe. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But WWE now fires him early when they clearly know that his being let go and terminated is causing him major financial hardships. Fire him early anyway. We don't give a fuck about you. Luckily, a lot of other wrestlers do, and we'll talk about Ridge Holland and his GoFundMe in just a minute. And then, as if that weren't enough, all these things that contribute to WWE and why they might be experiencing the numbers decline that they are. And like I said, don't put too much weight on everything and forget the fact that we are on the fall season. Like I said, every year, September, October, November, December, they're just kind of okay in pro wrestling. Nothing ever really crazy. Most numbers are down anyway. So a lot of these numbers are going to turn around for WWE, but the trend is unmistakable. So even when WWE hits their Mania boom and they get all those numbers, what's going to happen after Mania? They're going to start whacking off themselves in February and March when all these shows leading up to Mania is doing great. But then what if Mania shits the bed again? What if they give us another WrestleMania like we got last year? What if we get 2 shitty WrestleManias back-to-back in Vegas? And then what is that following Monday Night Raw going to be like? Or the SmackDown? Or the months and months of TV after WrestleMania? Those numbers are going to slide again. So WWE needs to make sure that they have a really, really successful WrestleMania season. A good Royal Rumble, good Mania, all that stuff. Otherwise, they're going to see this continue into next year, right when they're starting all these 2-night extravaganzas and whatnot, But here's one more thing that I want to mention. So Mark Shapiro was a guest on the Main Event with Andrew Marchard, and he said this about WWE PLEs, and this is just wild. So he says, and I quote, Mark Shapiro basically says WWE needs to take the torch and move past all of the PLEs created by Vince McMahon. And he said, and I quote, "They never seem exhausted. They're ready to take on a new shot, a new risk, a new opportunity." Are you sure about that, Mark? Hey, Nick, let's talk about launching a new event. Right now, a lot of our PLEs were created by Vince McMahon. We need to get in the business of taking that torch and moving past that. And Nick and Triple H created WrestlePalooza. Okay. He says, Nick Khan and Triple H created WrestlePalooza. Hey, Mark Shapiro. They did not. They did not create WrestlePalooza. ECW did. So he says that Nick and Triple H created WrestlePalooza, which is the launch event for our new ESPN deal, which did incredibly well and may turn into a super franchise. Now, we had already heard kind of rumors of that they wanted to make WrestlePalooza like a Big Five type of PPV or PLE. So now he's saying that WrestlePalooza is going to turn into a super franchise, one of the stupidest fucking names. Okay. And then he goes on to say, not to mention from a merch standpoint, I don't need to tell you, securing the IP rights and then selling the merch at WrestlePalooza, let's just say it was a real winner. So Mark Shapiro seems to think that because the WrestlePalooza numbers did well, that they need to change the names of all of the pay-per-views. Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. Those are institutions. Those are the only things, keeping some fans my age, invested at all. As you can say, man, I'm going to Survivor Series here in a couple of weeks. I was 10 years old when the first one aired. 38 years ago, I was 10. I had just turned 10. I was 10 in 2 months, 10 in 3 months, something like that. I mean, I was so fucking young, and here we are, Survivor Series 2025, and I saw my very first one in 1987. And there's already been talk about dumping Survivor Series years ago, and they talked Vince McMahon out of it. So now they are implying that they could be entering a new phase of WWE where they're going to change the names of all of their pay-per-views. They're not good at picking pay-per-view names. Their names are stupid. We don't need any Great Balls of Fires or Battlegrounds or Stomping Grounds and, oh my God, all these shitty fucking names. And they're going to try to, they are foolishly thinking that WrestlePalooza is just some marketing genius. And this show is going to replace WrestleMania and all this. These guys are up their own asses. So now you're going to just change all the names of the pay-per-view to wash away Vince McMahon. I'm all for washing away Vince McMahon, but don't take away WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble and SummerSlam. We need those. I don't give a shit what you do to the in-between pay-per-views. Call WrestlePalooza and Crown Jewel whatever the fuck you want. But I would not mess with the other ones. I think that's going to be a big mistake that's going to do more to turn off your audience. It's just not smart to do that. You can have some new pay-per-views. There's plenty of other months to do pay-per-views. But if this isn't in any way implying that they're thinking about changing like the big ones, I would not do that. But if you want to dump Crown Jewel and call it something else, great. Please do that. Same thing with Elimination Chamber. I don't give a fuck about Elimination Chamber at all. It's a stupid concept. I hate it. Goddamn spaceship with lights. Fuck that thing. Get it out of here. They don't do Hell in the Cell pay-per-views anymore. What do we have now? Like do we have Night of Champions? No, we have King of the Ring, and what are the other ones? What the fuck are the other ones? We had an Evolution this year, WrestlePalooza, Crown Jewel. So change those, but don't mess with the big ones. Don't mess with the big ones. That would be my advice. So things right now in WWE are not great, but things in WWE will turn around here, at least short term. Between now and Survivor Series, they're going to do some big Raws. Hopefully the SmackDowns will not suck too bad, but they're going to do some big numbers for Raws, big attendance, especially with John Cena being a part of that. Survivor Series is going to be huge. Saturday night's main event is going to be huge. And then there we go. It's Rumble season. Now, one thing that we're not going to see for this year's Rumble in Saudi Arabia is we might not see a whole lot of surprise entrances because it's going to be really difficult to keep surprises hidden. For example, if Jericho is going to be in the Royal Rumble, somebody's going to see his ass in Saudi Arabia and leak it. So I think a lot of those surprises might happen on television beforehand, which means January leading up to the Rumble could also be very exciting and very interesting in WWE if they want to keep some of these surprises here domestically on TV. So I think they're going to bounce back from these early kind of decline in numbers, and then you're right into Mania season. So WWE is going to be, pretty safe here for the next few months, I would say. But after WrestleMania season, if they go through the end of this year and and WrestleMania season, and it's not great, or they disappoint us in the main event of WrestleMania the way they did last year, or they do anything drastically wrong or stupid here, I think they're going to see a major decline after WrestleMania. So it's up to them to kind of snap out of it here. Hopefully they've realized they've got a dip in attendance and whatnot, but I don't really trust that they do. I think they are so far up their own asses that they have no fucking idea that fans are starting to say, okay, we're getting sick of your shit. And they're starting to be turned off. And plus, the shows are boring. The shows are lazy. Last night's SmackDown, even though we had newsworthy stuff, like think about what we had on SmackDown last night. We had a big Drew McIntyre angle. We had a new United States champion crowned in Chelsea Green. And we had just a fucking banger between Ilya Dragunov and Johnny Gargano. Even with that, the show sucked. So, they gotta just think a little bit more and be less lazy, I guess, is my advice to these guys here. Anyway, what did I have on my agenda next here? Oh, yeah. All right. So here's the next thing I want to talk about now that we've been done shitting on WWE, which I tried not to shit on them. I don't want you guys to mistake anything I just said. I am not happy with a shitty WWE product. I am not tribal. You have dipshit little boys in this universe that celebrate when AEW does a bad rating or has a bad show or something like that. I'm not celebrating this because I'm a wrestling fan. Plus, I cover this shit on YouTube for a partial living. And when WWE does good, I do good. When there's great things to talk about, this channel does well. So I want a good product. I don't want a bad one. I don't want their ratings to decline. I don't want their attendance to decline. I don't want them to be fucking idiots behind the scenes. I want them to provide good quality, compelling wrestling, television, and entertainment, and that's all I really ask for from these goddamn cretins. And they cannot seem to accomplish that. So I'm hoping that 2026 isn't a disaster. I think between now and WrestleMania has a chance to be pretty good. A chance to be pretty good. I'm not saying it's going to be good. It has a chance to be good. But then after that, and if they ride that wave and they got a great successful WrestleMania, then great. They might actually have a good 2026. But if they do not execute the next 6 months very well in WWE creatively, they're going to have a problem. A big problem next year. And you're going to see it. You're already starting to see it happen. So let's switch gears off of WWE right now and go over to AEW, and we're going to talk more about Dynamite here later on, but I wanted to put this in the news because I thought it was kind of humorous. So one thing that we've been desperately needing in pro wrestling across both companies is more championship belts. We don't have nearly enough. Last I checked, I think there's only 74 or 75 championships throughout wrestling. It's not enough. We need more. We need more. I don't care if you just unified a couple of your titles. Give us more. And Tony Khan did. AEW has decided, in most randomest fucking news of the week, that they are going to, I guess, resurrect the old national championship, which used to be a part of the NWA. This title got unified back in the early 80s with and became what is now known as the United States Championship, which is still defended. The lineage of this championship is in WWE right now, still being defended in WWE to this day. But the national championship went away. I think it was with the Georgia Championship Wrestling merger. I can't remember the history on it, but I remember when the belt was around, and I remember what it looked like. And that belt has not been on TBS in 40 years. I think it was like 1985. So Tony Khan has randomly decided to introduce this new championship. It's going to be, and I guess it's going to look exactly like the NWA National Championship, the red belt with the Continental US on it. And this belt is going to be defended in Ring of Honor, in CMLL, in New Japan. Apparently this belt will be defended anywhere AEW does business, possibly even on some independents and whatnot. And they announced that they are going to crown this inaugural champion at Full Gear. Now, I believe it's incredibly obvious who's going to win this. It's going to be Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley is going to be the first national champion. The AEW national champion. So I feel like this belt was created so they don't have to give Bobby Lashley any losses. Because on Dynamite, Tony Schiavone brought out Benjamin and Lashley, announced them as the first two members of the Casino Gauntlet match. That's what it's going to be at Full Gear to crown this new champion. So I believe that this belt was created to give something for Lashley to wear. That's the only reason they're bringing it up. And so now we have another championship, which is just a little bit baffling. I would rather Tony Khan focus his efforts on just as good creative as humanly possible. You know, taking your eye off the ball with stupid shit that we didn't ask for, we didn't need. We don't need this belt. We don't, I know I joked about it in my YouTube short this week, but I mean, come on, we don't need this thing. Nobody asked for it at all. But Tony Khan's like, yeah, here you go. Here's yet another championship. Right after I just unified some of my titles because I have too many titles. Now he's going to bring another one in there. And this isn't like AEW has more belts than WWE. They both have an ass load of belts. WWE just added a ton recently with the women's US and IC. I just felt like they needed one mid-card title, and they introduced two. AEW has just announced women's tag team championships that they're in the middle of running a tournament for, and now they're introducing this title. So both companies, I think, should shave at least 3 or 4 belts off of their roster. There is way too many championship belts, and I believe now between WWE and AEW, if you look at the amount of wrestlers that are on their main roster, forget Ring of Honor and NXT, main roster wrestlers in WWE and AEW, you take all of them and add them up. Then you take all of the championships in WWE and AEW and you add them up. And I think you're coming up with a number somewhere around 1 in 5 wrestlers are a champion. I bet you it's somewhere in there. If anybody wants to do the actual math on that, let me know. Hit us with it in the chat. But if you take all the main roster members, Raw, SmackDown, WWE, and all the main rosters of AEW, add them together, add the belts together, figure out what that percentage is, I bet you it's about 1 in 5. Something like that. Or 1 in 4 maybe. But it's crazy. It's too many championships. And the funniest thing about this is that this championship is still in existence right now. The NWA is a promotion owned by Billy Corgan. As we know, they have this national championship that is currently held by Mike Mondo, who's been very vocal on social media. You know, this is a very good thing for him. I don't think the NWA should be upset about anything here. This is giving them publicity. And this Mike Mondo, is loving it. Every single social media post since this announcement has been like this. This is like when somebody gets a reply from a wrestler on social media and then they just don't leave them alone. They just tag them and reply to them over and over and over and over again. You know, this guy is now, every social media post is about him and his championship and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how the if there's, intellectual properties to be had there, or if Tony Khan looked into this, or if he's allowed just to create this championship and basically have the same championship in his company that the NWA has in theirs. I don't even think it's a particularly pretty belt. I don't really like the red and the plates on it at all. So, he's going to have to change it to, AEW instead of National Wrestling Alliance. But if he makes the belt exactly like the one that's currently already existence in the NWA, that's just a little bit weird and also kind of funny. So I don't know what exactly they're going to do, but it feels like the Casino Gauntlet at Full Gear will be won by Bobby Lashley. That's my opinion. So we have yet another championship in AEW. Woohoo! Yippee. Just what we need. Thank you, Tony Khan. Thanks for giving us more belts. I got a fever. Never mind. And my only never mind. All right, let's talk about some more unfortunate news. How about Ridge Holland here? Now, Ridge Holland, this is a situation that's been going on for a few weeks now because we've already talked about it. Ridge Holland announced on social media several weeks ago that WWE informed him that they would not be renewing his contract when it expired, which is right in the next few weeks, or maybe it was December. I forgot what it was. So Ridge Holland, in response, took to social media after that happened and said that WWE would not be renewing his contract. He was criticizing the situation. He talked about how he was injured in another promotion's ring. And he did say WWE is covering his surgery and his rehab and whatnot, but that's the bare minimum. And he basically talked about some of his financial problems as well. And when he re-signed an NXT deal and apparently received like a 55% pay cut, now making only like $200,000, which if it's a 55% pay cut, that means he was making well over $400,000 due to his contract, from his contracts there. Now, once he went on social media and criticized the WWE and basically at the end of that said he was totally fucked, their response to him being worried about being totally fucked was to fire him early, because running your mouth on social media is breach of contract. In your contract, you are not supposed to talk bad about the company. And so since he did, that gave them grounds now to just release him early. We're not even going to let your contract expire and allow you to continue getting paid. We're going to fire you now. So you've already told the world that it's going to be very difficult for you to live after your contract is up, and now we're going to let you out of it early. What a bunch of nice guys. Now, they are well within their contractual rights to do this. Nothing that WWE is doing is illegal. They're allowed to do this. It just sucks. And it's a perfect example of like how they don't give a fuck about their wrestlers at all. Top cream of the fucking top and cream of the crop. Yes, they probably care. Anybody else is disposable. Once they get what they want out of you, they send you packing, send you on your way. We don't give a shit where you go or where you wind up. And Ridge Holland can't even wrestle for another 6 or 7 months because he's rehabbing what I think was like a broken ankle, right? So this is just a shitty situation. They have screwed him beyond belief here. And Ridge launched a GoFundMe, which right off the bat, I forget which one, if it was Matt or Nick, the Broke Bucks somehow have enough money to donate a very generous amount to Ridge Holland's GoFundMe, and Chelsea Green donated $1,000 and made it a recurring monthly. So he's getting $12K just right out of Chelsea for the year. She's paying him. She's going to give him $1,000 a month, and a lot of people have donated, and he's doing really well. So that's great. I'm very, very happy that that is an option for anybody in this world, that you can launch a GoFundMe and get some help. I'm really happy with that. Couple of things, though, and this is not a defense of WWE at all, because they can suck it. They can fucking suck it. Not a defense of WWE. However, you have to understand, if you are working for WWE, who you are working for. They don't give a shit about you. So you need to bite the bullet and keep your mouth shut here, because it's in your contract that they can fire you for being critical. And that's what they did. Now, I'm in no position to speculate on anyone's financial situations or how to spend or manage your money or anything like that. But Ridge Holland was in the company for a couple of years. He had at least a couple of years of main roster money, right? So if you were just making $400,000 a couple of years ago, and you had a couple of years of that money, probably in total in WWE since he's been there, he's made over $1 million. Where's your money? Where's your, it's one thing like, obviously you're not going to have any income coming in, but if you've been lucky enough to make over $1 million in the last 4 years, how are you broke to the point of GoFundMe, where GoFundMe is needed? You buy a mansion or something? You got to be a little smarter with your money than that. Invest some, save some, or whatever. But if you're making all that money and you're to the point where you can't even pay your mortgage, you mean to tell me you ain't got $50,000 or $100,000 in your bank right now with all that money you were making previously? Granted, he took a pay cut. I understand that. For a wrestler, $250,000 is not that much. But it's definitely livable, and especially if you were making $400 prior to that. You ain't got nothing in savings or whatever. And maybe he does. I don't know. I'm just surprised that he's speaking from a perspective of, oh, my livelihood could be threatened here. You didn't save anything, And also another thing I can already tell with the Bucks donating to him, AEW is going to bring him in. AEW is going to bring him in, so he's going to get a job. He's going to get hired by AEW. They're going to bring him in probably to capitalize off some of that sympathy and, the shitty things that WWE did to him. They're going to bring him in, try to use him. And this is the exact type of talent you want to try to bring in and use well. So you can say, hey, see, look, this is how we did it. You guys couldn't figure out what to do with him. And now we've made him into a star. Just like WWE did with maybe Jade and Punk and Cody and some others, who are all doing very, very well in WWE. Ethan Page and Ricky Starks and Cody and Punk and Jade all have championships around their waist right now in the WWE. So AEW has a chance to do the same thing here. They're going to sign him. His name's Luke Menzies or something. I forget his name. But I fully believe that we will see Ridge Holland under a different name in AEW next year in 2026. So he's going to make money. He's going to be all right. And in the meantime, I'm happy that fans and wrestlers have donated to his GoFundMe to help at least keep him afloat until then. So all the best to Ridge Holland. I feel terrible for what happened to him. I think it's such a perfect illustration of how shitty WWE can be. But at the same time, you got to be a little smarter with some of this stuff if you are Ridge Holland. And he should have just kept his mouth shut. And that's just individual maturity level, of being able to not let that stuff get to you, or know when to say something, or know when to fight your battles or pick your battles, because all he had to do was just wait. All he had to do was wait a couple of months, and he could have spilled all the tea. He could have gone on a podcast and said, fuck these guys, but instead he went on social media and did that prior to his contract being up, which gave WWE the excuse to fire him. And that absolutely sucks. So all the best to Ridge Holland, and I have a feeling that we will see him in AEW next year in 2026. We got a little bit of an update, but not any concrete news as of yet. But Tanahashi's final match is coming up here in just a few weeks, and we still don't know who his final opponent is going to be. Fightful Select had this to say this week. As of November 6th, the match wasn't officially signed and delivered, but we've been told that the candidates are down to 3 possibilities. A decision will be revealed in the next week or so, and New Japan plans on conducting a press conference to announce their plans. Fightful had reported that Shinsuke Nakamura was discussed internally, but was seen as a pipe dream. He's not expected to be the opponent. Fightful has mentioned numerous times that Okada and Kenny Omega have been considered as well. I think Okada and Omega, one of them would be perfect, but Nakamura would be nice. I know we saw him on SmackDown, and he's been back on TV recently and stuff, but come on, would it be? WWE, of course, will not allow him to do that, but why not? Why not? Won't you allow him to do that? What in the hell would it do to WWE at all to let him go do that there? But they can't. They probably can't show any footage of it because AEW is going to show footage of it. And I feel like that's probably just going to be a no-go, but it sucks. It's one of those situations where that should be allowed. It's not going to affect WWE negatively in any way. Who gives a shit if they let Nakamura go over to Japan and work this one match with Tanahashi? Obviously, if he got hurt, that would suck, but he's probably not going to get hurt. It's probably going to be fine. But I think Nakamura would be fun. But I also think Okada or Kenny Omega would be a lot of fun as well. So we'll see. New Japan might not want him losing to an AEW guy. I don't know. Might be want to be in-house. I'm not sure. Yeah, his final match is coming up. A lot of people retiring, A lot of people retiring. Goldberg and John Cena. We got AJ Styles coming up, Tanahashi, and somebody that we're going to talk about here in a minute that I kind of forgot about, Rey Mysterio as well, probably heading towards the end very soon. So we will keep our eye on who Tanahashi's final opponent will be. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a watch-along when that happens. I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a hell of an ending for a hell of a career. All the best to Tanahashi. Here's just a stupid little tidbit that I wanted to mention. Apparently, Vince Russo is a juggalo. He is an investor, which there's not a damn way in the world he invested a single dollar of his own money. This is probably kayfabe investor, but he's an investor in Juggalo Championship Wrestling, which I forget even exists, but the Insane Clown Posse do have a promotion. I've never seen a lick of it, but I did see the clip of Vince Russo running out to the ring and saving some guy. I don't think it was Steven Flo, but it was some guy that looked like Steven Flo, but it wasn't Steven Flo. So he ran out there and he got on the mic and said a bunch of stupid shit. I didn't even listen to it. So he is now in Juggalo Championship Wrestling and apparently is offering some help with the writing. Now, Vince Russo, of course, back in the day was a massive Howard Stern fan. And a lot of what we saw during the Attitude Era was borrowed from Howard Stern, from Jerry Springer and shit like that. And that is where I think Russo discovered the Insane Clown Posse and became a big fan of the Insane Clown Posse. And he's the reason that they came in and were a member of the Oddities back in 1998. So he's gone way back with, what are their names? Not Master P, Master 2 Dope or something, and Shaggy J. Shaggy J and Master 2 Dope. I think I'm close. So whatever they do, he's there with them now, and I think Vince Russo is an absolute fucking tool, and I don't give a shit that he's in Juggalo Championship Wrestling. I hope you fall on your fat fucking face, Vince Russo. Eat shit. Let's talk about that AEW book. Probably going to pick up a copy of this. I don't have one yet, but I think I would like to read it. And one thing I did want to mention is that we had news this week coming out about the book, and maybe some of you have seen it or maybe even read it, but some fans, I think, were wondering or maybe concerned whether or not Cody Rhodes and CM Punk would be featured in the book, and they are. So they were not ignored. They were not wiped from AEW history. They are featured in the book, and I have not taken a look at what has been said about them in the book or the chapters about them. But as soon as I do, I'll let you know what I think about it. But apparently they are in the book, and the book, I think, is available now because they were plugging the shit out of it on Dynamite this week. So it's either available now or there's a pre-order. It's either out or very close to being out. And apparently Cody Rhodes and CM Punk are big parts of that book, probably along with Chris Jericho, front and center, another guy heading to WWE. But you got Britt and Jericho on there, which I don't think we're ever going to see again in AEW. But the rest of them, I'm sure, will stick around. I think Hikaru Shida has signed a new deal recently. The Bucks, of course, are there to stay. Kenny's there to stay. Hangman and Mox probably there to stay. And we know Darby ain't going anywhere. He's planting AEW flags on Mount Everest, so he's not leaving. But Britt and Jericho, I think we will both see in the Federation. Jericho in the near future, Britt in the distant future. Our World Heavyweight Champion, our WWE Undisputed Champion, Cody Rhodes. He was a guest on the All the Smoke Unplugged. I guess that's a podcast or something where he was talking about his contracts and his career. And he said that the next WWE or the next contract he signs will be his last. So basically the next WWE contract he signs will be his last. And he plans on being done with wrestling and finishing up his career in WWE. Now, Cody, if you do the math, he's got a couple of years, several years left on this deal. And then if he signs another 5-year deal on top of that, we're probably talking 8 to 10 years until Cody is completely out of the ring. But even then, I don't think he'll ever leave pro wrestling. He's a Rhodes. So I think Cody will probably move on at some point to a Roman schedule or a Cena schedule. We do know he wants to get into acting. He's probably going to be doing some more of that. So none of this is too surprising, but I think a lot of fans too at the same time, kind of also felt that we might see Cody Rhodes go back to AEW one day. But I feel like with the Rhodes legacy and how much of that exists and lives inside of WWE, unless there's some major falling out, You know, if Cody has a falling out with Triple H the way he had one with Tony Khan, you never know, never say never, but feels like Cody will probably, ride off into the sunset as a WWE legend, and I'm happy for him. So I'm still a big Cody fan, love Cody, so if he wants to finish up with WWE, totally understand that, and by the time he's, 48-ish, by the time he's my age, he's probably going to be stepping away from in-ring competition. So that kind of does it there for the news. I do want to talk just briefly about this past week's Monday Night Raw. We're not going to run through the results of the show. I just want to talk about a couple of things that we saw. And one of them was the big angle that opened and closed the show. Of course, CM Punk won the World Heavyweight Championship at Saturday night's main event last Saturday, which I wasn't here for. So Punk had his victory kind of speech on Raw. And I got to say, it's why Punk is so good on the mic, is because he was doing everything a champion should do. The way he was talking about the people he wants to work with, talking about not only the top stars, but putting over the mid-card talent, saying that, hey, if I ever get in the ring with JD McDonough, and he hits me with this move, he's going to be walking around with this championship. Like, that's exactly what you should be doing. You should be talking about the landscape, talking about the stars that you're going to have to face, talking about the people who are coming for you, for your championship. It's old school. It's exactly what a champion should do. And so I loved his promo on Raw, loved his sweatshirt, loved his belt, thought Punk looked great, thought he said a lot of cool things, enjoyed it a lot. He's then interrupted by another good talker, Logan Paul. So Logan is out here now. I'm like, okay, maybe we're going to get a championship match out of these guys between now and the Rumble or something, and this can be an opponent for Punk to defeat. And Logan comes out. They have a few words, but then the Vision comes out. And the Vision threatens to attack CM Punk, and so Punk tells Logan, hey, you're either with me or against me, so if you're not going to fight alongside me, get the fuck out of the ring so I can deal with these guys. And so he goes to leave. Braun Breaker kind of pushes him down, Logan on the ground, and then they go in to attack CM Punk, and Logan comes in to make the save. So Logan makes the save, and then they wind up making a tag team championship main event, CM Punk and Jey Uso, the man he just beat on Saturday for that championship. They are teaming up to take on the Brawns, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. And Punk, now having to trust Jey, saying, I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know who I'm dealing with. And there's a lot going on with Jey, too. We feel like he might be heading towards a heel turn, and if anything was going to happen in the main event, it was probably going to be Jey turning on Punk. Well, this whole thing ends in a double countout, and then when the Vision is beating down Punk and Jey, and they've taken them both out, Logan Paul comes out to make the save. And he stands there next to CM Punk, who has a chair. Logan Paul gets the brass knuckles out, and they're about to go up against the Vision when Logan turns and knocks out in a great-looking punch, I have to say. It looked great. I mean, at least the camera angle they used was great. He nailed CM Punk. Punk slumped down, fell like a ton of bricks, right down on the mat. And Logan then kind of approached Heyman and Bronson Reed and Breaker and didn't really shake their hand or anything, but it looks like Logan Paul was brought in to be a seat filler or a placeholder for Seth Rollins, because even though they made no mention of War Games on Monday night, it feels like that's going to be the direction. It's going to be a War Games match with the Vision, and so WWE looks like they've decided to replace Seth Rollins in this match with Logan Paul, which is a perfect fit. He's athletic, can do a lot of the same things Seth can do. He's just as good as Seth on the mic. He just wears less stupid outfits. So if you're going to find somebody to kind of seamlessly fit in to the Vision, he would be a perfect choice. Now, he wouldn't be able to be the leader. He can't come in and be the leader of the Vision. I'm going to win the championship and lead this group. Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed would not stand for that. I think he's going to be brought in just to be a member of that team. And it still remains to be seen if they're going to add Brock Lesnar to this group at all and what exactly the War Games match is going to be, if that is still the plan. But it feels like it's going to be Breaker, Reed, Logan, possibly Brock. Maybe they still try to work in Austin Theory. That has been the rumor, going up against a CM Punk and Roman Reigns-led team, which could involve LA Knight, could involve Jey Uso. I don't know who, maybe a Jimmy Uso. I don't know who else they could get if they want to find someone from SmackDown, get Sammy in on this action. I don't know. Or maybe if they want to throw Chuck Cody in there, but it doesn't look like it's going to be Cody. It's going to be kind of a Raw match here. So Logan Paul kind of turned babyface in the opening segment only to turn back heel in the main event and take out CM Punk. So Raw this coming week is in Boston, and we know Punk is going to have a response here, and they are going to start building up to War Games. So we will be here on Monday. Don't forget to watch Monday Night Raw, and I will post a link to that by tomorrow for sure. Also on Raw, we had Dominic Mysterio cutting a promo, and he was interrupted by Rey Mysterio, his daddy. Now, it was rumored earlier on in the day that Rey was backstage. Now, I had this great pitch, this great plan for Dominic Mysterio and John Cena. My pitch was that either this Monday on Raw in Boston or the next week in Madison Square Garden, you run Dominic versus John Cena in the main event for the Intercontinental Championship, and you have John Cena beat him on Raw in the main event and win the Intercontinental Championship. And then you run the match back at SummerSlam with Dominic winning the title back. That's what I wanted to see happen. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now. They're probably gearing up for a Rey Mysterio and Dominic match here in San Diego, which is great. And they had this great exchange on the mic with Dominic, or I'm sorry, with Rey Mysterio referencing Eddie Guerrero. And then Dominic says, "Keep my father's name out of your mouth." Oh my God. So fucking good. I remember back 20 years ago in 2005, I didn't like the custody ladder match. I thought it was stupid. You know, it was one of the things that was turning me off about WWE. I told the story before when the morning that I woke up and I read the news about Eddie Guerrero's death, I was already starting to be kind of turned off or uninterested in what WWE was doing because my Attitude Era hangover was, still in effect, and I just wasn't really feeling a lot of what they were doing. And that ladder match, that custody ladder match, was like a good example. Like, this is stupid. No dumber than what they did in the Attitude Era, but it didn't have that same feeling to me as a fan. So when Eddie died, I remember thinking like, I'm just going to kind of take a break from wrestling, just kind of over it, And it was a lot of because things like that ladder match. But man, I've never been happier to be wrong about something in my life, because now looking back, I'm so glad we got that ladder match with Dominic and all that history that is there, with Dominic and Eddie. Oh my God. And the fact that Dominic has now grown into a pro wrestler that much more resembles Eddie than Rey. Now, Rey and Dominic have the same face. When Dominic came out at WrestleMania 39 with the mask, I thought it was Rey. They look exactly alike, but his aesthetic, he's taller. He's got the long hair. He's got the mustache. He far more resembles an Eddie Guerrero or even an Art Barr than he does Rey Mysterio. And I think that's so wonderfully perfect that it worked out that way. That Dom is tall and his dad is short. And Dom's got this sweet, mullet that gives women a pussy boner for miles and miles. And that just amazing Dirty Sanchez he has. And that just, his look is so tremendous. He's my favorite goddamn wrestler in all of pro wrestling right now. Dominic Mysterio is going to be your 2026 Money in the Bank winner. You heard it here first. I've been saying that for months. So now with Rey and Dom, I can live with this. If they do some sort of a match at Survivor Series, father and son, Rey versus Dom, I can completely live with that. Now, I'm wondering if this is the beginning. I'm wondering if this is what is going to set in motion Rey Mysterio's retirement. I mean, everybody's retiring. Like I said, AJ's hanging it up, and Cena, and now possibly Rey. Jericho is going to have a retirement happening pretty soon. Tanahashi is hanging it up. A lot of people are hanging it up. Samoa Joe is another name. Like, think about we've talked about the changing of the guard in the past couple of weeks. Like, we're seeing it right before our very eyes right now. So I'm hoping that whatever's going on here with Rey and Dom, this might culminate in some sort of a mask versus hair, or hair versus career, or mask and career versus hair. If Dom wins, Rey unmasks and retires. And if Rey wins, Dom cuts his sweet-ass mullet. It might be leading to that. I don't know if it's going to happen here in San Diego or not, but based on the segment that we saw on Raw, it feels like my idea for Dominic and John Cena is probably out the window, and it's going to be Dominic and his dad, Rey Mysterio, most likely. So that was pretty interesting. And like I said, this week in Boston, John Cena is going to be there, and they are kicking off the tournament. Rusev is taking on Damian Priest, and Sheamus is taking on Nakamura in the first round of the tournament on Monday. So we will be here to watch that together and see where they go. Now, in terms of, CM Punk and Logan Paul, I feel like Logan is not a real threat to CM Punk's championship. I think the real threat to CM Punk's championship is Roman Reigns. And we've talked about that before, what they're going to do at WrestleMania. To me, I don't think it's a given that CM Punk is champion going into WrestleMania. He might lose the belt beforehand, or he might just lose it at WrestleMania. We're not sure yet. But all I know is one thing that I've said over and over is that I believe when WWE decides to put the belt on Braun Breaker, which they are next year, that I think a bigger win for him would be a win over Roman Reigns. And here's what I propose. I think that Roman Reigns should beat CM Punk for the championship. Doesn't matter if it's at the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania or wherever it is. I think Roman should win the World Heavyweight Championship from CM Punk. And then I think you go into the main event of SummerSlam 2026, and you book Roman Reigns versus Braun Breaker, and you book it exactly like the main event of SummerSlam 2002. With Roman Reigns playing the role of Rock and Breaker playing the role of Brock. And remember how that match was and how that really, really launched Brock Lesnar. He had only been around for a few months. Braun Breaker's been around for a few years by this point, but he only been around for a few months. And to beat The Rock as handily as he did, really helped launch Brock into the superstar that he became. And I think Braun Breaker having a win like that over Roman Reigns, where he, it's a competitive match and everything, but he's still pretty dominant. And he puts down Roman clean. No Vision, no Bronson Reed, no Rollins, no Heyman, no nothing like that. Just Breaker versus Roman, mano a mano, and Breaker puts him down. It can be the battle of the two stupidest wrestling names to ever exist. Both of those names I hate. Roman Reigns is a stupid name, and Braun Breaker is the stupidest name ever. So it's the battle of the dumb names, but I would book it very similar to SummerSlam 2002. Rock versus Brock. Do it with Roman and Breaker. Similar type of thing. That's what I think they should do next year at SummerSlam in that main event. So that's kind of what happened on Raw this week. Also on NXT this week, I think we should bring this up because poor Chelsea Green, she has never been creamed like that before. Ever, apparently. I think I know somebody that might volunteer his services, Mr. Cardona, but last weekend, I think it was last Sunday, Chelsea Green and Ethan Page won the AAA Mixed Tag Team Championships together. So they did a big championship celebration this past Tuesday on NXT that was crashed by Joe Hendry and Thea Hale. And they had a big cake out there, and Chelsea got cake on her face. And her and Ethan coming back through the crowd. Through the curtain. I can't think of who Ethan is reminding me of. Some TV character or something. And she's coming through, and she, of course, says, "I've never been creamed like this before." And then Ethan Page stands there, and he goes, "I wanted to eat my cake with a fork, and now I can't." And he just storms off, and I'm like, who is he reminding me of? I can't place it, but he reminds me of like a specific television character, and I can't think of who I'm thinking of. But that was hilarious. So anyway, I wanted to mention Chelsea Green and Ethan Page's brutal attack during their perfectly innocent championship celebration where they just wanted to eat some cake with a fork, and they got jumped by the evil Joe Hendry and Thea Hale, and poor Chelsea Green has just never, ever been creamed like that before. It sucks. We're going to be talking about Chelsea again here in just a minute. Let's talk about last night's shitty SmackDown. Not a very good SmackDown last night. This show is so empty. But we did have some somewhat interesting things go down on the show. The show opened up with a Cody Rhodes promo. Now, Cody Rhodes talked about how he's done with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre is in the rearview mirror, he says. And what happens when anybody says that? That person is never really in the rearview mirror. So Cody, just with that line of his promo alone, is telling us that the situation between him and Drew is not over. So he says he's done with Drew, and he's going to take the rest of the night off and go sit in the crowd and scout his next opponent and see who the next challenger is going to be, or whatever he said. He's then interrupted by Aleister Black. Aleister Black and Zelina come out, and they get in the ring with Cody. Zelina even slaps Cody. And then Nick Aldis, who sees the situation escalating, he comes out and announces that Cody versus Aleister Black will be the main event of last night's SmackDown. And if we remember, Aleister Black, Malachi Black, made his in-ring debut in AEW squashing Cody Rhodes. I believe that was at Homecoming at Daly's place. And he squashed Cody Rhodes, and then he beat him again at Grand Slam. So I think they had 3 matches, where Black won the first 2, and then Cody won the final, or the blow-off. So it is kind of cool. I'd like to know, I asked this a couple weeks ago on Raw, I'd like to know how many matches we've seen happen on Dynamite and SmackDown. I'm not talking about how many matches have happened in WWE and also AEW. I'm talking about these specific shows, not a pay-per-view, not a Collision, not a Rampage, not a Raw, not an NXT. I'm talking about Dynamite and SmackDown only. No other shows. How many times have we seen a match take place on both of those shows? So we've seen Cody and Black on Dynamite and Cody and Black on SmackDown. How many other matches are there? Does anybody know? We talked about this about Raw a couple weeks ago, I think, when we were doing a watch-along. I forgot what match we saw in the ring, but I kind of asked the same question. I said, how many times have we seen a match happen on... It might have been Miro and Penta. Might have been Miro or Rusev and Penta. I said, how many times have we seen a match take place on Dynamite and also Raw? Now I'm asking the same question for Dynamite and SmackDown. The problem is, when I ask that question, people start throwing out pay-per-views. And I'm like, I'm not talking about pay-per-views. I'm talking about fucking Dynamite and fucking SmackDown. Listen. So anyway, if anybody has any stats on that you want to share with us, let me know. So we'll talk about the main event in a minute. The best match and highlight of the night easily has been what's been happening with the United States Championship. Sami Zayn was doing the open challenges, and now Ilya Dragunov is doing them as well. Jonathan Wrestling answered the call here for this one, and we had a heck of a fucking match. To the point where I thought Johnny had the belt won when Dragunov was really, really late on a kickout. But Dragunov and Johnny had a fucking battle of the ages. It was tremendous. And, of course, Dragunov got the win. And that is one tough-ass United States champion. And I'm really enjoying watching him work. He's really one of the only highlights right now on SmackDown is everything that Ilya Dragunov is doing. Jade Cargill came out with a promo. She said absolutely nothing other than, I'm that bitch. I did like how her scar is white. I thought that was cool over her eyebrow. So she's doing her best to make that look good. It does look badass, but you hate to see a gash that big on such a beautiful woman, but she's making it work for her. And so she says a whole lot of nothing on her promo and then ends it with, I'm that bitch. Whatever. And then she leaves, and then out comes Charlotte Flair and Alexa, who are coming out for their match. Or Charlotte's coming out for her match against Nia Jax next, and she's got Alexa with her. And as they're coming through, they stop, and they have a little confrontation there with Jade Cargill. And the confrontation seemed like it was more between Jade and Charlotte than anything else. So that's like not the first time they've teased those two. When Jade first came in, her and Charlotte had a little interaction backstage almost immediately, I think on her first night. So they've teased this a couple of times, and it looks like they might be booking or building towards maybe a Jade Cargill and Charlotte match. Now, I don't know if that would be something they would do at Survivor Series, but I feel like it might be something they do at Saturday night's main event, which we do have one coming up in December that has John Cena's final match on it. And John Cena, you're going to have more matches on that show. So Cargill and Charlotte sounds like one that might actually happen. And I like that. So Charlotte then has to go in the ring and face Nia Jax. Major wardrobe problems for Charlotte last night. So we got to see some of Charlotte, or at least some fans did. So her chesticles were popping out like crazy, and she was struggling to keep them tucked in. So that caused them some problems, but the finish was kind of interesting. We saw Lash Legend show up from NXT during the match. She attacks Alexa Bliss. She comes through the crowd and attacks her over the barricade. That's enough to distract Charlotte and allow Nia Jax to hit Charlotte with the Annihilator and get the win. So Nia Jax and Lash Legend now, I think this might be an actual call-up for Lash, as they did an interview backstage where I guess I didn't realize how big Lash Legend is, but her and Nia look the same size. I mean, Lash is a big, strong woman, and I think this is a really good team. It reminds me of Haku and Rikishi. Back when Haku came back in like 2001, right before the WCW buyout, and he briefly teamed with Rikishi. And I thought they were a great team. I enjoyed them. And I feel like Nia and Lash could be that, or be something similar to that. So sounds like Lash Legend is now on the main roster for good, and she has formed an alliance with Nia Jax. Alexa and Charlotte were also in the training room. Alexa's getting some ice on her neck from when she was being choked out by Lash Legend, and that's when they ask for some ice or whatever, and she's handed some ice, but she's handed some ice by the Kabukis, Asuka and Kairi, who are dressed as doctors, and Kairi pulls down the face mask and spits the mist in both of their faces, and so that was fucking weird. So Charlotte's got a lot going on with a lot of people, and it looks like the Kabukis are going to be next in line possibly to take those tag team championships, or at least challenge for them. And then, in the title change that we saw last night, Chelsea Green regains her United States Championship. She was the inaugural Women's U.S. Champion, and she has defeated Julia, who they just announced as the longest reigning U.S. Champion of all time, and someone they have done absolutely nothing with. When you look at Stephanie Vaquer on Raw, she's doing great. But, nobody cares about Julia. This is not Julia's fault. WWE is just not getting it right with her on SmackDown for whatever reason. And when I did my YouTube short the other day, when I was running through the championships, I didn't even know who the Women's U.S. Champion was. I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute. Who the hell is the Women's U.S. Champion? I briefly forgot. I looked it up. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, Julia. I forgot. And that's WWE's fault. So taking the belt off of her isn't really something I have a problem with. It's just the fact that they put the belt on her to kind of help her out, and then they never did it. They were too lazy to do anything intriguing or fun with Julia in her booking. So now they've taken the belt away from her in a very, very short match. This did not go very long. Kiana James hits Chelsea Green with a forearm when the referee's not looking. In comes Mel Batost. Alba Fire hits her with a super kick. Hits Kiana with a super kick, and this allows Chelsea to roll up Julia and then put her feet on the ropes and get the cheating win to beat Julia and win the United States Championship. Now, I'm thrilled for Chelsea Green because I love Chelsea Green. She's amazing. So I got no issue with her being the United States Champion. It's just, this is a disgrace what they did with Julia. Julia is way too good for fans not to care about her. And it's another thing, and I say this about any company, it's not just WWE. AEW will have a tendency to do this as well sometimes, when it really annoys you as a fan when you see someone who should be a can't miss, who should be a guaranteed hit. Julia is going to bring it. She's a great wrestler with a great look, knows what she's doing. She's going to bring a lot to the table. She could easily be a future women's champion one day and dominate the division. And she's being utilized, in a way that isn't allowing her to really connect or to get over in any meaningful way. And I think that was the point of Kiana James joining her, is to kind of help them both out, to help get Kiana over, but to also help out Julia because there is the language barrier there. So having Kiana maybe as a mouthpiece or a manager, they thought would help, but they just never did anything. And they've had this problem a lot with champions. Tiffany Stratton was kind of like the same thing. She had a lot of big wins and stuff, but really what were they doing with her? And it's by no means over for Julia. She'll bounce back from this. She's going to have to get a rematch based on how Chelsea won the match with her feet on the ropes like that. So we're going to get a return. Maybe there's a hot potato here. Maybe we get the belt right back on Julia and they try to set her on the right track. But that match last night, even though I'm so happy that Chelsea is the U.S. champion again, because she's really fun as the U.S. champion, it was kind of a disgrace, I think, that match, and kind of a bummer. Another reason why SmackDown kind of sucks. Tala Tonga defeated Rey Fenix last night. Sami Zayn, who's uncleared, came out to help and save Phoenix from a post-match beatdown. And then in the main event, it was Cody Rhodes versus Aleister Black. And during the match, both men are down, I guess, and then Drew McIntyre shows up through the crowd out of nowhere wearing beige pants and a white tank top, comes in the ring and claymores the referee. And he's been bitching about the refs a lot, especially as it relates to Cody. So he claymores the ref, and then he grabs him. He says, if you're with Cody, that means you're against me. And he's all butthurt about the referees, right? Then Damian Priest comes out and attacks Aleister Black. Zelina Vega gets involved. She jumps on Damian Priest. Aleister Black rakes the damaged fireball burned eye of Damian Priest. And while they brawl, Nick Aldis comes out furious, and he yells at Drew McIntyre, and he informs Drew McIntyre that he is going to be indefinitely suspended for his attack on the referee and Cody Rhodes. Big face-off between McIntyre and Aldis. And it's another suspension for Drew. It's like another little break after a title loss. They just did this. They did this shit on Raw when Adam Pearce suspended him, right? So he's been suspended by both GMs just in the last 365 days. And I don't know really what this means. Cody took another loss, and based on the way he lost at Saturday night's main event, I wasn't convinced we were going to get another match between the two. But it sounds like we probably are, and since Drew McIntyre has such an issue with referees, I feel like we might get a special guest referee. And maybe that's where you tie Randy Orton in, or maybe you bring somebody else in, or maybe it's a hand-picked referee by Drew McIntyre, or maybe it's Nick Aldis himself could do it, which I wouldn't mind. So I feel like if we are going to get yet another Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre match, it's probably going to be with a special guest referee. Now, I would assume that they would want to do this at Survivor Series versus Saturday night's main event, because Saturday night's main event is going to be too much about John Cena. But I feel like maybe Drew will get reinstated somehow in the next couple of weeks. But shit, Survivor Series is only 3 weeks away. So they're going to have to do it it's going to have to be a quick suspension. Just put it that way. So if they do a quick suspension with Drew there, and he's back, and they book a match between Cody and Drew at Survivor Series, and we have a special guest referee, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction they go. So next week, we have some John Cena tournament matches announced as well. We're going to have The Miz versus Jey Uso. Boy, that's exciting. And LA Knight versus a mystery opponent. Now, it's not really a mystery opponent, because when Nick Aldis pulled the ball out last night, he goes, ooh, that's interesting. I'm going to save this as a surprise. Well, you should at least tell LA Knight, save it as a surprise for the fans, but LA Knight has a right to know. Otherwise, he's at a disadvantage. Why does everybody else get to know their opponent, but I don't get to know mine? So I'm going to make a prediction. Right now, even though I could be wrong, because this is going to be two massive baby faces at the same time, but I'm predicting LA Knight is going to face Joe Hendry. Because when Aldis looked at it and was like, oh, I got to save this, it's not going to be somebody minor. And I don't know if it's going to be a heel, because Aldis almost looked happy about it. So if it's a heel against LA Knight, I don't know why Aldis would be so excited to save this surprise. It would make more sense if this was a babyface. And LA Knight versus Joe Hendry, I think, would be an interesting match, with LA Knight getting the win. Joe Hendry ain't winning this tournament. Joe Hendry is not facing John Cena. And LA Knight versus Joe Hendry is the match I think it's going to be. The only other possibility is if it's like Jeff Hardy or something like that. That would be fun, or a Nick Nemeth or a Matt Cardona. I think it could be any of them. I think it could be Matt Cardona or Joe Hendry are the two most likely options. I'm going to go Cardona or Hendry, but I'm kind of leaning towards Hendry for next week, just to get that pop when his song starts playing. So yeah, that's what we have going on next week for SmackDown, and last night's SmackDown was quite uneventful. I was working last night, and I asked you guys on social media, I was like, how was SmackDown? Was it decent, or did it suck a pile of ass? And pile of ass was the response I got. So when I came home last night, I'm like, well, I'm just going to watch the Cliff's Notes on this show. I'm not going to torture myself for 2 hours. So just kind of watched the highlights there and called it a day. And that leaves us with this past week's AEW Dynamite. Again, I don't want to run through the whole show here, just some key points from this week's Dynamite as we head into Blood and Guts and Full Gear. So we already talked about the national championship, right? And the show opened up with Tony Schiavone attempting to talk more about that, but he was interrupted by Samoa Joe and the Ops. Joe was pissed because he thought Schiavone, who definitely was in on it, was in on the Halloween fake out from last week when Hangman dressed up as Tony Schiavone, which was just tremendous. And so he's kind of threatening Schiavone, and Hangman, Hook, and Eddie Kingston all show up to kind of run off the Ops, and they book and goad the Ops into a trios championship main event for later. I didn't really like the opening segment. I thought Joe was acting a little silly oh, you want a match against us? Okay. Just the way he kind of, the whole delivery of the whole thing was just a little bit, I don't know. Didn't love it. Didn't love any of that on Dynamite. Dynamite was not a bad show, but it wasn't great. I think it was maybe slightly better than SmackDown, but it wasn't super compelling. And part of the reason is like everything is so fucking convoluted. They're doing these blood and guts advantage matches, and there's a bunch of them, and they're like best 2 out of 3. So the first blood and guts advantage match we have is Claudio defeating Orange Cassidy. So right after that, or later on in the night, after Claudio beat Orange Cassidy, we've got Darby Allin taking on Daniel Garcia in advantage match number 2. So the Death Riders got the win in the first one. Darby got the win in the second one, beating Daniel Garcia, which means Jon Moxley now has to face Roderick Strong tonight, and the winner of that match, that team will have the advantage. So it's basically like best 2 out of 3. Way too much detail for, we don't need all this. We don't need this. You can have one match to determine an advantage. You can do a simple coin toss, but it's this convoluted shit that Tony Khan needs to understand that, you know, as a big-time wrestling fan, as a wrestling mark, someone who clearly enjoys writing television and stuff, he has to think about what the fans enjoy. Because what he might think is great might not translate to us very well. And I don't want to have to keep track of 6 different blood and guts advantage matches. It's just for Dynamite next week. Just the goddamn blood and guts matches. Just figure it out a simpler way is all. It's like it goes right along with those like $100,000 matches, $400,000 matches, $433,000 matches, and now at Full Gear there's going to be a $100,000 match. So, or I'm sorry, $1 million match with the Bucks. So it's just too much. We don't need all that shit. So the advantage matches I didn't care about, but we had a couple of them on Dynamite. And we also had one with the women. We had Megan Bayne defeating Mina Shirakawa in their blood and guts advantage matches. And then we have 2 more tonight. So we had Megan Bayne defeating Mina on Dynamite, but then tonight you've got on Collision, you have Jamie Hayter versus Sky Blue. And if necessary, you're going to have a third one. So I guess if Sky Blue were to beat Jamie Hayter, then it's over. Then the heels have the advantage. But if Hayter wins, which I assume she will, then we're going to get Tekla versus Harley Cameron tonight. So I think we're going to get both of those on Collision. So Collision is all about blood and guts advantage. It's going to be Mox and Strong, Hayter and Sky, and Tekla and Harley Cameron. So those are a pain in the ass and annoying to keep track of. I didn't care about any of that shit at all. Also, Mark Briscoe is going to be getting another shot at Kyle Fletcher's TNT Championship at Full Gear, but Don Callis got Briscoe to agree to something in return. If Briscoe loses, he must join the Callis family and dump the conglomeration. So that's going to be the extra stip there for Full Gear. And speaking of the Callis family, they're also pressuring the Young Bucks to join. And they're thinking about it. Nick and Matt still have some thinking to do. And they said they'll get back to him. And then Okada, in a very threatening kind of smiley way, he goes, "Don't take too long." Love that. I love Okada. He is so much fun. Anyway, Okada is probably the best example of this, but he's a good example of why not having English as your first language is not always bad. You know, there's always going to be some limitations there with promos. But if you find the right guy or gal and the right personality, you don't need anything else. You know, Asuka is that way. You know, Asuka and Kairi both, they can be incredibly entertaining and you don't know what the fuck they're even saying, but you're laughing and you're entertained by it and you love them. And Okada kind of is the same way. He's just coming from a different direction. He doesn't have the craziness that, I mean, Asuka is just batshit nuts. Okada is more, you know, quiet, threatening, methodical type of thing. And he's also very, very funny, but not as boisterous as Asuka is, but I love him. So we'll see if the Bucks wind up joining the Callis family or not, and we'll probably get that answer relatively soon. We had the women's tag team tournament as well. Athena and Mercedes, they lost. They lost to the Babes of Wrath. Willow and Harley Cameron. What a team. What a name. Babes of Wrath. I'm into that. And that sucks because I liked Athena on TV and seeing her, and I want to see more of her. So you had Billy Starks out there. She was kind of backing up Athena and Mercedes. Statlander came out to take care of Billy Starks, allowing the Babes of Wrath to get the victory, which I loved. Shivani did come back in the ring to bring out Lashley and Benjamin. We talked about that earlier on, and I fully believe that Bobby Lashley will be the one to win the national championship at Full Gear. Also, this was so great. My God. So we got an FTR segment. FTR comes to the ring. They're talking shit about Brodito. The titles are on the line at Full Gear, FTR versus Brodito. And Brodito, or Bandito, I should say, has some family at ringside. I believe his mother and his brother and maybe even some more. And FTR is out there talking smack, and they said, you know, they wanted Brodito to come out to the ring so they could shake their hands, but they're nowhere to be found. They must be scared. And then they start talking smack to the family, and then they cut backstage. Renee Paquette is at Brodito's dressing room door, and Stokely is standing there. Something has barricaded the door because they're banging on it, and Stokely's sitting there with his phone, and he asks Renee, he goes, "Hey Renee, you want to watch The Wire? It's streaming right now on HBO Max." And he's got, "Come on, watch with me." And just, he's the best. So as FTR is talking smack to the family, Bandito's brother jumps him. They pull him over the barricade. They bring him in the ring. They start beating him down. They cut backstage again to Stokely, just sitting by the door, watching The Wire, I guess. And then in comes Brody King's fist through the door. Like, it went right in front of Stokely's face, and his eyes just got real big. And then Brody grabbed a hold of him, and they busted through the door, and they ran out to run off FTR. And that segment was all fine, but what made it was Stokely. Stokely there, you know, talking about watching The Wire, and then the way Brody's hand came through the wall. Stokely for president. My God, he was one of the most entertaining people across all of wrestling. I fucking love that guy. And that was probably my favorite still image of the night, was that one right there with Brody King grabbing a hold of little ass Stokely's neck. Oh, so much fun. And in the main event, the Ops did successfully retain over Hangman Hook and Eddie Kingston as Hook tapped out to Powerhouse Hobbs' torture rack, which wound up getting Hobbs, I believe, is it a championship match? Hobbs is going to be facing Hangman Page at Blood and Guts next week on Dynamite, and that is a Falls Count Anywhere match. I just didn't catch if it was for the title or not. So you guys can tell me there in the chat. So here's what we have for Blood and Guts. The women's match is going to be Mercedes Moné, Megan Bayne, Marina Shafir, Tekla, Sky Blue, and Julia Hart. They're going to be taking on Chris Statlander, Toni Storm, Willow Nightingale, Harley Cameron, Jamie Hayter, and Mina Shirakawa. Now, we were supposed to get Penelope Ford and Queen Aminata in this thing, but they both got injured and both got replaced, I believe. Aminata was replaced by Mina. I'm not sure who Penelope was replaced by, if she was replaced at all, but they are both injured and out, so that kind of sucks for them because this is the first ever women's Blood and Guts match, and I feel bad that they aren't able to participate in this. Also, next week for Blood and Guts, it's the Death Riders versus Darby Allin, Jay Briscoe. I'm sorry, Mark Briscoe. Darby Allin, Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly. And then we have Hangman Page versus Powerhouse Hobbs. That's what we have set, I think, so far for next week's Dynamite, this week's Dynamite, Blood and Guts. And then we have full Gear coming up on the 22nd. We've got Hangman Page versus Samoa Joe for the AEW title. We've got Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe for the TNT Championship. We've got Mercedes Moné versus Chris Statlander for the AEW Women's title. We've got that Casino Gauntlet that's going to crown the new national champion, which I believe will be Bobby Lashley. We also have FTR versus Brodito, and the Bucks are taking on. The Bucks are in some sort of a match as well. I don't have that one written down. So the Full Gear card is shaping up, and so is Blood and Guts. And like I said, on Collision tonight, we have those three Blood and Guts advantage matches, and those are the only matches I've seen advertised, but I'm sure there will be more. Let's see what you guys have to say here in the chat. Haven't updated this in a couple of minutes, so I'll knock out some super chats and see what y'all have to say about things. Let me go all the way back to the top here to make sure I got them all. If anybody hasn't smashed that thumbs up button yet, I would appreciate it. And don't forget about tomorrow's watch-along. World Superior, you missed the old format where you just talked while the screen was just pictures. Well, I'm kind of still doing that. The screen is just pictures over off to the left-hand side. You just have me over here on the other side talking. So I'm sorry that my face offends you so much, World Superior. Go eat a dick. I don't care. I'm kidding. I know you've been around for many, many years. Many years. All right, let me see here. William, I got you. There we go. Let's get this next one from Vontae. Thanks, the new one. Thanks for that $5 earlier. I blame my hatred for R-Truth, the character. I love Ron Killings, but why go through all of that shit just to bring him back as the same person? Annoying. That's another good example, especially when he showed back up, cut his hair off. I'm going to be this new person, and then WWE just what? What? They got lazy. They didn't want to have to bother themselves with a new character of a guy that they tried to release anyway, and they're like, let's just have you go back to being R-Truth. He got his money. I'm sure R-Truth is happy, because they didn't, apparently when he was like let go, I think it was a contract extension that he refused. I think they didn't like let him go. I think whatever they offered him, they lowballed him and he said no. And so he got released, but he got brought back for probably better money. So at least he's making money. At least he's making the money that he feels like he's earned. So at least that's something. But yeah, on screen, we had never got anything new out of Ron Killings. And I was kind of intrigued by that when he first showed up and cut his hair off. I'm like, oh, this could be good. But right back to it. Right back to doing what he was doing. Typical WWE. What's up, Daniel? A lot of people in here. Delayed Gratz, Brian Spencer, Ricky Zalvadar, Daniel Mendola, Montana Zombie. Good to see you. Colin, FRGN is in the house. T85. A lot of people I didn't say hi to earlier, but I do see you. And thank you so much for being here, listening to my ass ramble on about wrestling. Let's hit this very generous super chat from our boy, Ryan Adams, whose Minnesota Vikings beat my Detroit Lions last week. Congrats, Ryan. Speaking of books, Natty's book was fantastic. Natty describing how her relationship with Vince and how Vince didn't call TJ for almost 18 months after his injury in that dark match with Joe, which wasn't supposed to be in. I have not read any of Natty's book, but I did hear something about that she was very honest and revealing about TJ's injury and his retirement. So I've been anxious to kind of read what she said, and it sounds like they had some issues with that. Vince took 18 months to call him. Well, I mean, he stayed there. He's a great producer and a great agent. The women love him. And he's credited with a lot of those great women's matches, being the agent for those matches and stuff. So he does wonderful things behind the scenes, but that does suck the way it all ended for him. I've always felt bad about that and the way his career came to an end. And same goes for, Big E and, other people that have, especially with the neck, that have to retire early. Chris Bay, and just sucks. So I will be interested in reading that. I mean, I don't really sit down and read books anymore, but I can do audiobooks and I can listen to those in the car. Or I can pick up read some transcripts of some chapters or whatever. But I'm going to definitely try to dig up and find whatever Natalia said about that situation with Tyson. Zane G, Reigns vs. Breaker would just be Lesnar Goldberg 04? No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. I don't think so. Those guys aren't leaving. The fans don't hate both of them. I think it's going to be, I would book it exactly like SummerSlam 2002, Rock versus Brock, with Braun Breaker playing the role of Brock and beating Roman Reigns, this dominant champion that has, been atop the WWE for so long, and he's sliced in half and put down and beaten clean by Braun Breaker. That's exactly how you make someone. I don't think it would be like 04 because Roman and Braun aren't leaving. It was both their last nights in the company that it might be, but it won't be. Yes, Doug Unfunny, good point bringing that up. I meant to mention that when I was talking about Jade Cargill's promo on SmackDown, is that she is probably going to be built to a match against Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. That's where I believe that match should happen, is WrestleMania. The problem sounds like Bianca's broken finger, she's been suffering some setbacks from that. So luckily, it's still early November, but I'm hoping that she can be back at least, by the Rumble or the Chamber so she can win one of these matches so she can challenge Jade at WrestleMania for that championship. So I feel like health, as long as she's healthy and she's cleared and she's good to go, you have to do Jade and Bianca. But if this finger is going to keep Bianca out any longer, and you start getting into next year past the Rumble, then you might have to postpone that match yet again, which sucks. The Juliet, thanks for the $5. Is Tanahashi being Okada's final opponent being discussed? Yes. I think you have that reversed. I think you mean Okada being Tanahashi's final opponent. Yes, we talked about that earlier. Okada and Kenny Omega seem to be heavy candidates, and this pipe dream of Nakamura going over and doing it would be tremendous, but I think we all know enough about WWE to feel confident in saying that's not going to happen because they're not going to let it happen. Because they're assholes. Colin Wright, I did see that. Yeah, Dwayne Johnson knew about Bin Laden's death before the president. Is that true? He is getting as bad as Hogan? Well, the thing about The Rock, though, Colin, is that I don't remember exactly what time we learned this as a nation, but there is a receipt. Rock tweeted out that he heard that Osama bin Laden was dead before it was announced to the world. So I believe he's telling the truth about that because he has a tweet with a timestamp on it that I believe was before the president came out and informed everybody, or however we found out that night. He found out from a friend first, and I think he was one of the first people to put it out there. But in terms of him knowing before the president, I don't know how he would know before the president because Obama was the one that was setting the whole thing in motion. So Obama, there's that great war room or that conference room photo of him and Hillary and all the people in there as they're like listening in to this whole operation taking place. So I don't think he found out before Obama. I just think he knew before the rest of the world did because Obama was right there in the room listening to all this stuff play out in real time. So, but it is possible, but he's kind of telling the truth about that because he learned it. And then we didn't know until they let us know on TV. And then John Cena, of course, told the pay-per-view crowd or wherever they were that night about it, that Osama had been compromised to a permanent end or whatever. Oh, the memories. The memories. Yeah, Zach. Yeah, Rock's got a deleted tweet that kind of backs up that claim. But there's no way there's no way he knew before Obama because Obama was the one executing the fucking plan. He was right there listening to it all. But he knew before a lot of us did. I found out about, I remember when I knew that Kobe died, I heard a couple of rumors, and then it was the tweet from Dwayne Wade that just said, "Oh, no, Kobe, no." And I'm like, it must be real, man. If these guys are tweeting it, they wouldn't just respond to a rumor, and just kind of sinks in, Crazy. But anyway, I have got to get out of here because I got to go work now. So I'm going to finish up I know it's Saturday, but it's really my Friday night. I've got the next 3 days off, including tomorrow. So we're going to be here watching Survivor Series 1997 tomorrow night. We're going to watch the screw job together, and then we're going to be here again on Monday night watching Raw together, and then we're going to be here on next Thursday night talking about Eddie Guerrero. So you guys have a great, great rest of your Saturday. Thank you so much for being here, and make sure you join us tomorrow night for the watch-along. It's going to be fun. And I'll be talking to y'all soon. Thanks for hanging out today, guys. I really appreciate it. Peace.